All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs, welcome to the Beacon TVL show, the weekly podcast from Beacon DeFi, your beacon in the world of decentralized finance. I'm your host, Professor Chris, your DeFi professor. We've got a great show lined up for you today as we tackle the news of the week that's relevant to you, our dear users in the world of on-chain investing. Today on the show, first we'll talk about our rotator. Back on the panel after a fun time we had, sir, in Austin. Got Luke from Taoshi subnet number 8 PTN. How are you, sir?
Good, man. Thanks for having me back, Chris. Happy to be on again today. It's always a blast.
Yeah, man. Your angles look exquisite, by the way. How's the weather up there?
Well, I'm in New York this week.
Okay.
And it's rainy and foggy outside, but it's been nice. Yeah, I'm actually going to Alaska this week, so with my family. So it should be interesting.
Wow. What a trip, man.
Yeah, should be cool.
Love it.
Quite the voyage.
Yeah, I'm excited for you, man. So cool. Also on the show today, we have the founder of TAO and TPN subnet number 65. And I don't know the other subnet ID, I apologize. But we have Mikkel on the show. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Thank you very much. Doing good. Thanks. Pleasure to be on.
Yes. Excellent. So we do have some things to talk about. What I did want to talk about first is for anybody who is going to be going to Las Vegas next week, I will be there. Pretty much the entire week. I'm actually excited to go there. I'll be there on Monday because Crypto Mondays will be holding an event in Las Vegas, and I'm a big fan of Crypto Mondays. It's actually something I'm actually planning on setting up here, a chapter of Crypto Mondays here in the Midwest, here on what we call the Silicon Prairie, because it's good to have people from around the area meeting up regularly in person to talk about crypto. So that will be pretty much the beginning of that week, and then a whole lot going on with what's coming up after that. With the official 2025 Bitcoin conference, this is the year after the big 2024 conference in Nashville, where President Trump, first president to come to a conference like this, said the very famous words of, on day one, I'm going to fire Gary Gensler, which, just was like the iconic roar of people. We unfortunately weren't there for that last year. We're definitely going to be there for all of the shenanigans this year. I'm very curious to definitely hear about and meet a whole lot of people there. I hear there's also possibly going to be quite a few BitTensor folks out there as well. So if you're going to be out that way, please feel free to reach out. Happy to meet up. There's one thing I like about Vegas. There's all you can eat everything. So that gives me a lot of time to just sit down and relax at the table. Are either you gentlemen going there next week?
No. Wish I could make it, man. These events like that are awesome. Just good to get out and network, hang out with folks. Should be a cool one too, especially with Bitcoin ripping through all-time highs today. Curious to kind of see what the narrative is at that event. I mean, obviously, it seems kind of obvious, right? People should be bullish. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's probably going to be the biggest thing, is that there's definitely going to be a lot of probably an aura is probably the word I would use. There's going to be a lot of buzzing. I'm excited to go to these side events. We'll see how the floor looks. It's going to be at the Venetian in Las Vegas. Really a fantastic venue to go to for a crypto conference, as you know, Luke. So
yeah, excited. Have fun. Try not to have too much of the free food and drinks.
That's for me. I'm packing an extra suitcase, not just for bigger clothes, but also for hopefully for some swag to give away to the community. As you all know, I like to give away swag at a lot of places that we head up to. So yeah, if you're in Southern California, I know quite a few people who are literally just driving up for side events and then leaving after a couple of days. So if you're going to be there, let me know. And thanks to Luke for that segue, because I mean, the segue right now is that Bitcoin's at an all-time high, guys. Man, the stars are aligning. I know, right? The stars are aligning, and we're seeing quite the climb here. Even if we just go back a year, seeing where we're at and being at this height. Man, what a moment. What a moment. I'll start with you, Mikkel. What are your thoughts as we look at Bitcoin now, looking up towards 110 at this point?
Yeah, I think it's quite funny that looking back at the past and sort of the momentum and the sentiment we had around all-time highs, this one feels very quiet. Very quiet. Like I didn't see a whole bunch of people like celebrating or whatnot. We just like sort of had a very sharp upwards, then we pushed through all-time high. I'm not really sure that people actually realize that we actually bumped through all-time high now, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with Mikkel. I think it has been very quiet, right? Like you don't see a lot of bullish sentiment on the timeline. Thinking back to 2021, you opened X, or, well, I guess Twitter at the time, and it was so obnoxious when price was above 60K. And now you come in, and it's pretty quiet. I'm not particularly hugely bullish in, I guess, the medium term. I would think that this would kind of be the last real push up, be it 120K, 150K, whatever the number is. Would have to kind of think that this is the last leg. If cycle structure remains similar to previous ones. However, it seems like the narrative is shifting a little bit with some of the USD inflation and the USD buying power decreasing. It seems like people are taking Bitcoin to be more of the inflation hedge that it was touted to be years ago. So I'm interested to kind of see how it continues to play out.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads into our next subject that's been a big factor, I think, with what's going on, and that's the couple of passages of the Genius Act, which will give a little bit of a framework for stablecoins. For anybody who's not familiar with this bill, because there's also a stable act that's going through the House, the Genius Act will pretty much bring a lot of what we're thinking of when we think of stablecoins and everyday user custody, to the forefront. So it allows banks to issue stablecoins, non-banks as well, but they're going to have to register and meet certain regulatory benchmarks specifically for KYC, anti-money laundering laws. But there's also, in the event of bankruptcy, stablecoin holders will be given priority over creditors, and of course, there has to be one-to-one liquidity provisions. Any issues with this specific? My goodness, all these ads. The issues have been honestly with the fact that there's corruption ideas, specifically because President Trump and his family own World Liberty Financial. They already have a stable coin out there, so of course this benefits them in terms of like emolument acts and stuff like that. But the markets have pumped off of this because ideally this brings legitimacy to crypto mainstream. So I'll start with you, Mikkel. I mean, the passage of this, the passage of the vote of this act. Now they also voted to now move it to the amendment, and why there's so much bureaucracy for something like this, I don't know. It's just bring it to the vote at this point. But they now have had two votes, one for closure, so there can't be filibustering, and now one for the amendment process. So pretty bullish that they've brought quite a few Democratic senators over in support of this. So starting with you, with regards to how you think the landscape will be once we see stablecoins becoming a major part of just the overall ethos for crypto investing.
Yeah. I'm not too wise on the politics in the States. I'm based in Amsterdam in Europe. We have our own way of doing stuff, which basically just means regulate everything until it dies, which is definitely not a good one. So I don't know when everything actually passes in the States. I'll leave that up to you. But in general, I'm very happy that there is clarity, regulatory clarity, both for EU and also for the States, is because we've been living in like sort of this dark grayish zone for a very, very long time. Meaning that for one, you're not really sure what you're allowed to do as a builder. For two, if you actively try to register something with something like a Dutch SEC or something, they typically don't even understand it, and they won't tell you if you're allowed to do it, yes or no. But they will say, we won't say if you're allowed to do it, but if we find out that you're not allowed to do it, we will sue you, we will fine you, which is very, very difficult, environment to operate in and just try to do new stuff, innovate. But then since crypto is borderless, you have a whole bunch of stablecoin issuers in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in the States, across the globe, decentralized ones, CDP, synthetic stablecoins, blah, 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 blah. And then all of them seem to find adoption, right? I mean, Ethena launched their USDE with their SUSDE. Phenomenal new product. I mean, it's amazing.
Love it.
But then in the EU, for example, you are allowed to issue stable coins, but they are not allowed to be yield bearing. So then all of a sudden, the entirety of the EU population is forced out of like a premium type stable coin, and then has to adopt like the weaker version, so to speak. But I do think stablecoins have proven to be one of the, if not the largest use case for payments for crypto real so far. So having clarity on that, I think, is a huge win for the entire industry.
Yeah, Luke, I wanted to get your thoughts on this mainly for two things, because if this passes, there's going to be an interesting set of ripples. And I'm glad you brought that up, Mikkel, with specifically with MiCA that you have there in the EU. The Stable Act, I believe, doesn't allow algorithmic yield-bearing stablecoins either. So there's going to be a little bit of a movement there in terms of how they amend that to make that work. But stablecoin, this is from Miles from April, but there's more than 1% of the global M2 for US dollars that are taken up by stablecoins, mainly thanks to Tether, because they own more US debt than the majority of the world at this point. I think they're like in the top, I think they're like 19th now. I'd have to double check on that. But that means that with the passing of this, if people buy RWA stablecoins, this means everyday users across the globe are going to own US debt because RWAs will be tied to T-bills. So, and thanks to BlackRock, of course, that's probably where the majority of these stablecoins are probably going to find some traction with. So, I think this is fascinating, to be quite honest, because people are going to be, obviously buying Tether, buying USDE, buying USDC. But there's going to be a large number of people who are going to be able to tout that they own US debt. What a world we live in, right?
Right. Absolutely. I think it's interesting. Obviously, it adds another layer of complexity. But I think typically people kind of look at regulation as a bearish thing in some ways. But I think in the sense that if you're involving the United States government and it's kind of giving a further sense of legitimacy to crypto in general, I would look at that as more bullish, right? Because if the U.S. government is involved in something, they don't want it to lose. And it seems like the administration right now has been very pro crypto. So I kind of look at it as more bullish thing. I think more so the only real bearish thing in terms of regulation is really taxes. That's what people are concerned about. You can regulate as much as you want, as long as you're not, stepping on people's toes and I think limiting kind of what their abilities are in crypto. But people are mainly concerned about their tax gains. And obviously, I don't necessarily think that this would impact that. So I look at this as kind of a more bullish thing, just adding legitimacy to, crypto ecosystem and tying the U.S. into it more in general.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, there's been a long-standing strategy of tax loss harvesting for a lot of people in this space, right? So we're going to see, if this takes off, probably maybe not related, but 2 billion of USDT was just minted 4 hours ago by Tether. But there's liquidity coming in, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to come in. This is for stablecoins. So with we've talked about Visa and MasterCard now having payment rails for users and merchants specifically to settle in USDC or the stablecoin of their choice, within seconds. I think, and I don't know, Mikkel, if this is something that happens a lot in the EU, but at least in the US, it takes days for payments to settle in stablecoins. So now with all of this movement, regulations in place, I mean, we could be in a situation where payments, where remittance, they all settle within seconds. And that's a really exciting thing to be bullish for, especially if you know nothing about this space. The fact that, because I use this example all the time, I have a bank account where I have most of my income coming into, and then I have like a credit union account to pay for, my car payment, and I send money back and forth. It takes 3 days, 3 business days for my money to get from one account to the other. This would cut that into fractions of seconds. So, I mean, a world like that's got to be really exciting with the setup now that the U.S. is on board with the rest of the world, right?
Completely agree. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't say it better.
So I will say, Mikkel, now that since you're in the EU, what is it like with having that type of regulation? Has it made crypto more accepted, I guess is the word I would ask?
Funnily, not really. No, funnily, not really. Like a lot of coins, stable coins, have been delisted from centralized exchanges.
Right.
That's been like the first big wave that you see going. So all of the institutions offering, at least to retail users, they sort of went through a massive purge of basically all the stable coins. And since they're not sure yet what the enforcement will be, they're like even going a bit on the aggressive side. Like let's say DAI, for example, they're not sure if DAI is allowed, so then they just remove DAI right now, and then maybe they add it back later. But better be safe than sorry from that regard. But at least in the Netherlands, the banks, most specifically, still struggle a lot with crypto. Like the larger banks, they're very afraid of crypto. If you do anything with like a business account, they'll just bounce you and have somewhere in the terms, if you do crypto services, we will not take you on as a client. For retail, for private people, they're a bit more lenient now. I saw last week even that like my personal bank included the option to buy crypto, sort of like Revolut has already had for a long time, which is unheard of for any traditional Dutch bank. So they're the first Dutch bank to actually offer crypto natively in their app, where you can just buy it, which is amazing. But the on-the-ground adoption for actual stablecoin payments to buy coffee or something, for example, I've not seen any increase or not like a meaningful increase there yet.
Yeah, I think the best days are definitely ahead of us for this, especially with the number of debit cards that I'm seeing that you can spend money on, from Solana to Linea to Base to Avalanche even. We're going to be seeing more changes to allow you to actually more easily offboard your crypto funds without having to go through all of the red tape of taking it back to a CEX and down to your fiat account. So one thing I did want to revisit really quick was back to bubbles for the week. That's the other thing we normally talk about. Obviously, the news of votes, the news of Bitcoin at all-time high has pushed a lot of things higher. TAO up almost 6.5%, which is good to see. And interestingly enough, I think, what was the other one that really stuck out to me? Yeah, Athena up 8% on this as well. So Athena, Ondo, a lot of these RWA type markets are seeing a good bounce off of this type of thing. Trump, of course, up 9.5% because of the announcement of the dinner. So the dinner squeeze continues. I think tomorrow is the dinner actually for Trump.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, I think it's May 22nd. So everyone gets a dinner, and then depending on how high of a tier you are, you get a personal tour of the White House. So
personal tour of the White House. Damn.
Actually,
that's good.
Talking about TAO too, interesting little situation this morning. On all exchanges, TAO was at 425 about when I checked a couple hours ago, and on Coinbase it was sitting around 500. Interesting arbitrage opportunity. Now it's looks like 437 on other exchanges and 458 on Coinbase. Wondering if maybe it's a lack of liquidity and maybe heavy spot buying, potentially one or the other. I'm guessing more of a combination, but that was peculiar to see today.
You're hearing the ARB opportunity live, guys. Go out and
still exists. Yeah, I should have jumped on it earlier.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, the day was a lot more interesting for BitAnswer, and maybe not even in a good way. And it might definitely explain part of the arbitrage opportunity. Is they halted the chain, they paused the chain because of a faulty transaction, like a sort of a nested call that kept trying to force something. They had to halt the entire chain. So BitAnswer, as of now, is in like behind firewall resuming of the finality. But this morning or the US night, I think, there was no finality on the chain. So they halted it. So you cannot effectively arbitrage because you cannot send any TAO from exchange A to B, which makes for a weird situation where the chain doesn't work, But of course, centralized exchanges, they work because they just have an order book. And then depending on the exchange, maybe they have the actual assets, maybe they don't. But if you can't move them cross exchange, then it makes for a really hard arbitrage. So
that's a fair point.
Explain part of it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mikkel. I totally breezed over that thinking about it. But yeah, really, really unique situation today. Yeah, seeing Bittensor, chain frozen. I think this originated about 24 hours ago now, somewhere in that ballpark. So chain's been down for a bit now.
Yeah, it was a batch call, right? That kind of went all loopy.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, hopefully they fix that, because of course we would like for them to fix that. That actually, it's ironic considering the next thing we're going to actually talk about, which is Layer 0 is now live on BitTensor EVM.
Yay.
This was I first heard about this from JJ from TAO Hash at Subnet 14. He tweeted about it, and then other people talked about it. And my first initial thought was, whoa, this is huge, because Layer 0, the OG of interoperability here in DeFi, that's a gigantic partnership for BitTensor to continue to move on that way. It's not that nuanced though, because it connects all of Layer 0's piping and adapters to BitTensor EVM, not quite to BitTensor Fini, which is substrate based. So this is while this is good, this hopefully kind of lights a fire under quite a few people, quite a few devs, to try and make it a better experience to easily get from, for example, Arbitrum to BitTensor Fini through something like this, because it is just it's a messaging thing, and being able to push liquidity messages back and forth. So Luke, I'll start with you. I mean, this is huge for EVM, at least on the BitTensor side, for projects like Subnet 10 at Sturdy. What in your opinion, what's the overall, based on what you see in your circles, what's been the response to this? And of course we'll get to Mikkel after that.
Yeah, so admittedly, this actually isn't really my area of expertise. However, I've seen a little bit of chatter about it, and I think it's a good thing, right? Like, if the more that we can kind of merge BitTensor with other chains and integrate assets, I obviously think that's bullish as you expand opportunities to the larger crypto ecosystem in general. So I don't know. I guess I haven't explored this too much personally, so I don't have too much to say. But in general, I think being able to integrate chains is a good thing. You want to make crypto as decentralized and accessible to everyone as possible, and if there's something that does that, I generally look at that as a good thing.
I mean, I'll put this out here for free, and this is something I talked to a couple of people in Austin. The first person who's willing to do liquid staked TAO, like literally by you actually have a mechanism that goes in and stakes TAO in at a specific validator, the next available validator, and then have liquidity composable DeFi assets based on top of that, I think could be a huge winner. And that's the one thing that EVM could be really good at, right? Look at how liquid ETH restaking has done for Eigenlayer. I think having something like that for TAO, I think, would be a really interesting experiment to see how things go. Because admittedly, from what I've been reading, Mikkel, a lot of people are more interested in this for alpha token subnets, but subnet alpha tokens rather. I'm actually more curious for TAO as a whole. It'd be awesome to be able to go to Pendle or to some of these other EVM liquidity things with like a liquid stake TAO to be able to earn yield, and or even as an AMM, well, supply it as collateral and then farm using borrowed assets that way. So wanted to get your opinion on your thoughts on this move with Layer 0 and BitTensor.
Yeah, there's two main components from my side to that question. Is one, TAO actually started out as a liquid staking protocol for BitTensor, but just prior to the DTAO migration, we decided to pivot to subnet owner tokenization. And we do actually have two, or at least two, liquid staking protocols that are live now. One being TensorPlex once, and the other one being Sturdy. TensorPlex already has or had Pendle integration, for example. They have DEX liquidity on Aerodrome, on Base. It's been there for 6 months already, I think. But the adoption was very low. Like you'd assume that people would maybe jump onto it, but reality proved that was not really the case. And initially, of course, when TAO wasn't listed on all of the major exchanges, giving access to, by default, staked through liquid staked TAO on EVM was very useful. But now you can basically buy it anywhere. So the limitation for getting TAO luckily became lower. But I do still think that liquid stake or composable and fungible liquid staking or liquid restaking tokens on Bittensor EVM will be very useful. For the layer 0 part, I love it. I come from the EVM side of DeFi. I've been doing a lot of stuff with layer 0 for quite a bit already. And having that endpoint deployed on Bittensor EVM is huge, because now most of the teams were forced to work on a bridge themselves, sometimes trustless, sometimes with a component of trust. But trusted bridges or non-trustless bridges are basically never a good idea. We've seen it many times historically. Many bridges, they just suffer an exploit at some point, which is just, it's not good because people will end up losing money. But layer 0 has proven and very, very solid tech. So now that that endpoint is deployed on Bittensor EVM, that really opens up the whole ecosystem to tap into the full EVM ecosystem, which is orders of magnitude larger than the current Bittensor base on the substrate part. And then if you combine that with the recent Spectra update on Ethereum, including account abstraction, I think you can now really cook up some very interesting use cases where you tie in a subnet through the Bittensor EVM layer using layer 0 integration. I might say we are potentially working on something like that, for example, for our subnets. But now all of a sudden, one funny example is you could hypothetically use your fart coin on ETH directly without having gas on a wallet to pay for subnet services natively on Substrate through account abstraction, bridging, swapping, buying alpha, and then burning the alpha, which I think is it's dope. We're going to see a whole bunch of nice stuff in the next months.
I have never even thought of that idea. But now that you've put that into the ether, I'm like, oh, this definitely has to happen. Not necessarily for Fartcoin, but just for the ability to, because we've seen this through 4626 vaults, right? This is a really cool idea. So the fact that, we're now accelerating off of this, yeah, I think what you're saying is fantastic. I think we're definitely going to see this now that I don't want to say the floodgates are open, but the gates are at least open for people to at least come and take a peek. And we're very excited about BitTensor. We're very excited about Layer 0. These are things that our communities have done very well at, specifically with Layer 0, and being early to that conversation. We're very big fans of all of that tech. And before we head off to talk more about Tao Fu, I did want to go ahead and do a quick segue to us, which is our free group, Total Value Locked. If you want to learn from the best of the best, and you're here, you love what you're hearing, you want to figure out, how do I get onboarded? How do I learn more? We've got all of that covered for you here at our free group, Total Value Locked. It's on our school platform. Just go over here and check out our Start Here post. You'll get a wonderful video message from myself and our co-founder, Andrew, and you'll hear about our 3 paths that we have to get to all of the education that you need. We have our Introduction to DeFi course here on the site, but if you want to get there faster, you can, of course, take our Beacon Accelerator offering, or if you want to be amongst the best, get that white glove service, you can join our Beacon Mastermind and get the best. We've been talking about BitTensor for months. Anything that I talk about when I came back from Austin, that was all in our mastermind. So if you're interested in that, please go ahead and, again, school.com/Beacon, go ahead and sign up. And we also have our Beacon Challenge. This will probably be the last time I talk about it here on the show. But sorry, Luke, I'm covering your face. But
all right.
If you want to take the challenge and earn your first DeFi dollar through liquidity positions in 48 hours, join us. Take the challenge. Go and watch that video. We've helped multiple people already get to that goal, and they couldn't be happier. So if you're looking for a great structured way to do so very quickly and in a very easy way, please feel free to join us. beacondefi.io/challenge. And yeah, let's get back to the show. Let me hide this banner so we can do that. And we'll talk about the last story before we talk about our featured guest, Mikkel here, our co-founder, founder at Taofu and TPN. Steak and Shake accepts Bitcoin.
Oh, baby.
Now, Mikkel, I'm not sure if you've been to a Steak and Shake, sir.
No, I haven't. Yeah,
it is a national restaurant chain, diner style. It's very like old school when you come in. They don't serve hamburgers; they serve steak burgers, which anyway, it's the same thing. Anyway, I grew up eating steak burgers in a chili three-way, and they now accept Bitcoin. Now, there apparently is a lot of, well, I guess you could say a lot of controversy about the fact that they're accepting Bitcoin, because I guess it depends on what camp are you in. Are you in Team HODL, which I've met a lot of these people. They don't care about DeFi. They care about nothing. They believe that Bitcoin is a store of value, and that is it. You accumulate and you go to sleep for 15 years, and you'll wake up a gazillionaire, right? And then there's Team Adoption, which believes that pushing Bitcoin mainstream is the better option. So you're okay with just going and paying $20, and it's not just gonna be $20, guys. The service fees for this stuff is gonna be insane. To buy a burger and then replace the BTC later, I guess you could go that route as well. I personally wouldn't be giving my Bitcoin to Steak and Shake because I'm pretty sure that they're not going to be. Yeah, I mean, just the Sats alone has to be going to Steak and Shake. If it's not, that's a terrible execution of plan for them. But I'm just curious. I know there are a lot of people who actually, like in Switzerland and the EU, Mikkel, who actually pay municipal services and stuff with Bitcoin. I just don't know if I'm willing to pay for services or at least just food with Bitcoin. What are you, especially in a world where we have easy ways to like I have my Coinbase card and I have other cards. I have a MetaMask card where I can spend USDC that way. What are your thoughts? Are you more adoption or HODL in this case?
Yeah, I think in 2013 we had the first web shop for food in the Netherlands accepting Bitcoin, and I think people got like really wrecked at doing that because they spent like a whole bunch of Bitcoin for some delivery comfort food.
Yeah.
So looking back at that story, I would definitely be in Camp HODL and not spend Bitcoin to buy food because it might end up being very expensive food in the future. I am a fan of having crypto payment rails in daily life, but I'm not a fan of doing it with Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Agreed.
And quick final disclaimer, by the way, I'm not a fan of Fartcoin. I just took that as like an example. I don't like meme coins. I don't like meme coins.
Spoken like a true TAO founder. Luke, your thoughts, sir? I'm assuming you've been to a Steak and Shake a time or two.
Yeah, I actually want to go. I saw that they changed their fries to tallow fries, but that's a whole nother.
That's
story.
right. They cook them in tallow. I gotta eat there then.
Yeah, I want to too. There's actually one about 30 minutes from my family's house, so I'm gonna try and check it out. Anyways, besides that, I actually would say I'm team neither. I think, well, I guess I would be more team HODL in this case. I would agree with a lot of Mikkel's comments. I don't think it's necessarily beneficial to have Bitcoin as a crypto payment rail. Obviously we talked about stable coins a little bit earlier, which I think is a lot more useful in this case. But to me, this is really more of a marketing gimmick / publicity stunt by Steak and Shake, which I don't have any problem with. I think it's a good move on their part. And, it adds credibility to crypto again, which is obviously something I'm a fan of. So I think it's a good thing. But I personally wouldn't be paying with my crypto for a Steak and Shake. I'd just rather, tap my Apple Pay and call it a day. So
yeah. And also on the user and adoption side, I'd also be very curious, like ideally speaking, or I'm a big fan of self-custody. But then if the Steak and Shake is accepting Bitcoin, I think they will still be using some sort of centralized entity in between, And then maybe if the guy selling the burger presses like a 0 too much, all of a sudden you pay like 10 times the amount. Then are you gonna like call the centralized entity to send back the money? How does that work? And then let's say if somebody does use like a self-custodial card, the wallet's public, right? Because we don't have zero knowledge on any of that. So then that also makes it very prone for people to target like wealthy individuals. Most likely the payment card that they use is also like not enforced by any passport or biometric or whatsoever. And most people are not that proficient in like understanding what's actually happening and like what type of risks they expose themselves to. So I do think that we definitely need to like educate people and be cautious. But I am a 100% fan of self-custody.
Man, that I had to think about that. I'm like, now I can think about it as a $5 wrench attack because I had beef tallow fries at Steak and Shake.
Yep.
Huh. Hmm. Be careful out there, guys.
Be careful indeed.
Yeah, be careful out there. Obviously, none of this. Normally, when you have an address, it doesn't tie to you. But is there a way for them to eventually connect the dots? Yeah, probably without ZKs, but that's coming as well. So, technology, being on the bleeding edge of technology, what a life to live in 2025, right? Interesting. So, with that said, we're going to move on to our what we've learned section. This is our section where we feature our featured guests or any specific concept we're going to be talking about today. Today, that's going to be our guest Mikkel from Taufu Subnet 65, and talking specifically. We'll start first with the TPN, which is something that you guys are building, which is the TAO Private Network, which is a decentralized VPN, which is something I'm actually really excited about. I'm going to most likely sign up as a miner because I'm really excited about the idea of getting an ROI and contributing to the ecosystem that way. So I did want to, there's probably quite a few people in our audience who may know what a VPN is, may not know exactly what it is, but they definitely don't know why a decentralized VPN is important. So Mikkel, definitely want to go ahead and start you off there and start with your pitch on that.
Yeah, and Chris, we welcome you with open arms on the subnet to become a miner. So anytime,
Awesome.
You're welcome. Yeah, for the listeners that don't know, a VPN is a virtual private network, which the most important thing to note is that it enables you to hide your IP, so your location, basically your internet location, from the rest of the world. Meaning, if you're, let's say I'm in Amsterdam, and then if I connect to a VPN service in the States, then everybody on the internet checking me out and checking my traffic out, they'll only see all the traffic as if I were in the States. And then the connection between me and the node in the States is masked from the internet. So nobody can see. And this can be very useful if you do not want everybody on the internet to know who you are and where you are and what you're doing. And one of the issues traditional VPN providers have is that they're quite centralized, meaning they have big data centers where they host all of their servers. And for one, the internet usually already knows that it's a VPN. So for the people of you that did use VPNs before, it's very likely if you connect to VPN and then try to do like Netflix, then you're prompted like, hey, we see you're using a VPN, please stop, which kind of defeats the purpose. The whole purpose is to be like anonymous so that nobody is knowing that you are actually using a VPN. And secondly, you have no clue what the centralized entities might be doing with your information, with your data. So there is also a huge component of trust. So what we've built with TPN is a decentralized version of a VPN infrastructure with a very heavy component on being developer friendly. So the way that we usually look at it is that we have the subnet, which is basically a whole bunch of miners offering up VPN connections. And then we have a set of validators, which basically orchestrates the requests from users to the miner pool. Any developer can access the TPN API and basically request IP connections on the subnet. We're working on the payment rails natively on the subnet, meaning that any dev can use it. They have to pay in TAO. The TAO then gets used to buy back our alpha token. So that we sort of at the most core level of the protocol build in the payment rails. And then it's an open system, right? Anybody can tap into it, anybody can use it. We, as the team from TPN, will have a flagship product, meaning that we will build a very dope Web2 consumer-facing VPN application so that everybody can use it. And then in the back end, we leverage that infrastructure from Bitensor. You're muted.
I love talking into nothing. But I wanted to point out that I think the interesting thing about this is what a lot of people may not know is that Nord, Express, Surfshark, a lot of these corporations are owned by one entity. So the fact that we're looking to decentralize this is fantastic. And there's multitudes of technologies. So what I did want to ask is, with regards to decentralization, why should people be looking to a decentralized provider as opposed to going with someone like Nord, who offers you only pay for 3 months out of the year if you sign up through X and Y influencer type deal?
Yeah, to just be like very, very honest, for a large group of users, it might not matter too much because a large user group on the planet doesn't care too much about their privacy and how their data is being used or abused. For the people that are a bit more cautious as to how their data is being treated, a decentralized version of a VPN gives more sort of guarantee/security that the connection is not being snooped. So then you have a very large miner pool. Every connection that we build is unique. And so there's not one large entity that can be there sucking up the data or listening.
Luke, any questions that you had before you ask a couple more?
Yeah, so as a native Surfshark user, would be curious, would I be able to sign up for this today and use your guys' VPN services? I mean, as a Bitensor builder myself, I feel it's only right to use a decentralized service from another builder.
Can I click on this button? Is it okay if I do that?
100%.
Okay, cool. I did this last night, Luke, just so you know. It works great. You have to know a little bit of coding and understand your terminal to do this. So it's not for people who have no tech knowledge. This will be way too deep in the weeds for them. But I did test this out, last night and over the weekend, and yeah, it works pretty well.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's what I want to show the stream too. Is these are things that are usable products already. My next question, Mikhail, would be: are you guys building a more, I guess, less tech-heavy way for someone who doesn't have the coding knowledge to do this and set up a VPN using your guys' decentralized infrastructure?
Yeah, so there are actually a number of decentralized VPN projects on Web3 that have tried before. My brother is the lead developer for the VPN subnet. I love working with him. I love it. Been trying to get him on board for a long time, but he never wanted to. But he already built some VPN companies before and also sold one, so he's very deep into the VPN. And a very large issue is that most of these VPN providers, they're not developer friendly at all. So then you need to have like really in-depth knowledge of how the protocol works. You need to have their native currency. It needs to be like smart contract based, which makes it very difficult for anybody to build on top. So then they have their own VPN application, but externally you can't really build on it. So then some of them actually have quite a good pool of node providers, but then if there's no adoption, then eventually, of course, the system doesn't really work. So that's specifically why we take a developer-friendly first approach, where it's very easy for external developers to build their applications on top of TPN. And since it's an open API, what gets me really exciting is we will build a VPN application just like the NordVPN, for example. We'll have a Chrome plugin, which is a proof of concept that's already working, which we haven't presented yet, but then you can just install the extension, hit the connect button, and you're connected.
Awesome.
But since it's like an open API, many people can build a whole bunch of cool stuff, which we haven't even thought of, hopefully. So one easy example, we sponsored the hackathon in Austin for the Endgame Summit. And one guy built a VPN hopper, basically, where you connect and then every hour you hop somewhere else. And we already have 80 unique countries where we have IP connections, which means that in like 80 minutes, you could hop your connection across 80 countries, which is pretty dope. It's not
Really
something
cool.
we had thought of before. But I'm really looking forward to like a whole bunch of unique use cases being built on top of our open network. Yeah, amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. Yeah, for someone like me, I will definitely. I'm not a tech guy, but I will definitely be on the lookout for when you guys deploy something like the Chrome browser extension. Can ditch something like Surfshark and move to a decentralized VPN. It's pretty cool.
So this is the alpha time of the thing. So if anybody wants to use this and set this up, it is currently free, correct, Mikkel?
Yes. Right now the API is free, and we're working on implementing the payment rails.
Yeah, it works pretty well so far. I was really pleased with it. If you know your way around shell scripting, you can easily just create a shell script to put it up and down. I had it set up system wide. I'm sure you could probably do it application wide if you really wanted to work that way. I could definitely see, and again, I'm just saying this just to be clever, but Elevate Gaming probably want to consider working with them on this to easily put a VPN in with your gaming type stuff. I think that would be pretty interesting. I am actually, like I said, I'm curious about becoming a miner. I know it's difficult to be a TAO miner overall, but I really like that your mining system is actually quite elegant, because you just have to ultimately just rent a VPS in a place that is not a common place where people rent VPSs, and set up a very modest, I think 2 gigs of RAM is what you need to be a miner, which I thought was great. And you could easily find a nice little passive income profit way doing it that way. So I'm just kind of putting it out there for anybody else who might be curious as to why I might want to be a miner. It's because the barrier to entry of it is actually quite low as compared to a lot of other projects. So if you're looking for something to get into, something you may want to consider.
Yeah, so far most of the weights, the reward weight is also being calculated on the uniqueness of the geographical location.
Yes.
Because we really wanted to have like basically a global network, which means we need to have representation in any geographical location. So for the initial bootstrapping of the network, almost all of the weights is just put on the IP location. And then over time, as we build up active users, we will most likely be forced to move towards a combination of uniqueness, of latency, of speed, of bandwidth, because in the end, let's say if somebody wanted to connect to Alaska and then stream some Netflix there, right now you probably get paid pretty well if you have an IP in Alaska. But once we are production ready and we're upscaling, we will also need to prioritize other type of metrics. But for now, being early is always good, right?
Being early is always good. I know Karen just asked in the chat what the website is. It's tpn.taofu.xyz. I'm putting it there in the chat for everybody who wants to get into that. And that's the quick start guide. Again, if you know your way around programming, you can set this up pretty easily from the command line. But yeah, I think Greg had a question as well. We'll probably ask this here. Does the miner, are you paid in alpha token? Because you're not going to be paid in TAO most likely, right?
No, in the current design of BitAnswer, by default, all of the miners always get paid in alpha. It is up to the subnet owner. I mean, if you want to send TAO to hotkeys that are mining, you could hypothetically do so. But by default, the miners are rewarded by 41% of the alpha out, so they get paid in alpha.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I'm excited on becoming a miner for sure, because I have some ideas on where to place things. And
Chris's first mining endeavor.
I know it's gonna be bad.
Very good.
You'll be all right.
No, I have an addictive personality, brother. I have a problem with setting. Once I get into one, I'm like, oh, let's keep going, and I'll do it. I will do it because
become the top miner on TPN and PTN. Why not?
Love it. I definitely
Rename acronyms.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now we just need an MPT. Whoever's building PNT and NTP, let me know. That'd be fantastic. So
we can
that's
fill out the 3-letter. We can fill out the 3-letter spread across the ecosystem. We got
exactly.
Yeah,
NTP neural training program. And,
there is someone who's doing that, by the way. I did notice that, and when I looked at the subnets, I'm definitely not shocked by that. So, Mikkel, I also want to talk about the other part of TAO, where you're building a lot of interesting tech around subnets. So let's kind of talk about this for a second. So if you want to tell me a little bit more about the other things that TAO does, please.
I've been eager to hear about this one too. I've read a little bit online, but I don't have a full understanding. It seems really cool.
Yeah. So when so for us, the decision moment to pivot was when root weight was introduced in a post-DTAO world. So what we have now, for the people that don't know subnets too well, is that if you own a subnet as a subnet owner, 18% of the alpha out proportion is for the owner, 41% is for the miners, and 41% is for the stakers / validators. But you don't actually get rewarded any TAO. So your only rewards basically alpha. And then to get alpha as a user, or to sell alpha as an alpha holder, you need to exit via the protocol-owned liquidity pool, which every subnet has, which is tied to TAO. And then the height or the amount of TAO from the block rewards, which for now is 1 TAO per block, how much goes to your subnet liquidity pool is determined on the relative price of your subnet in regards to all the other subnets, that was quite a bit of complexity. But the TLDR here, which is important, is that if a subnet owner wants to cash out to pay for operations, right now they have to forcefully sell their alpha into the liquidity pool. If they sell alpha into their liquidity pool, the price of their subnet goes down. And if the price of their subnet goes down, they also get less incentives from the protocol, which sort of turns into like a downwards going spiral, where it's quite hard for most of the subnet owners to generate cash flow and sort of cash out on their endeavors. And so what TAO enables subnet owners to do is that we fully tokenize on the Tensor EVM the subnet owner key and the associated 18% governance right associated to them. We then allow for the subnet owner to sell a portion of those tokenized versions of the owner key. We call them SNSs, subnet seeds. And then subnet owners can raise capital or raise cash flow through our launchpad without having to sell alpha natively in their liquidity pool, meaning they don't have to compromise on subnet price, but they can raise capital in the present to fund for operations or for cash flow. So this model fits very good with the current implementation of DTAO. That's the most important part for the subnet owner side. Shall I do the user side as well, or do you want to shoot some questions?
Chris,
sorry, I was talking into nothing again. No, I think this is great. You've got a really good group of people backing you on this specific project. I'm actually very curious about the use cases moving forward, because this turns alpha tokens into quite an interesting commodity. from a liquidity standpoint. So I'll start with you, Luke, since you're on a team that's on a subnet. What do you think of this idea?
Yeah, so this is actually really interesting. This is something that we're grappling with internally as well. It's a tough challenge, right? Like you have your own token holders, and if you sell, people obviously don't want you to sell because they're holders of the token, and that will drive the value of their investment down. So the approach that we've laid out right now is, we want to take a KPI-based approach with our own commodity that we're building in Glitch Financial. So the more AUM, the more we're able to sell tokens. As Glitch Financial revenues itself will even just drive back to the token value. But this other solution that Taofu is building, I think, is really interesting, because then that gives subnet owners the ability to not tank the price of their token, which obviously upsets holders, and you can kind of see it, capitulation, which is obviously problematic. So I think this is something that we're definitely investigating as well, routes like this, and other similar routes where you can avoid dumping the token on the market. So I personally expect to see adoption of this and other similar approaches that allow subnet owners to still fund their businesses without selling alpha tokens. So I'm curious to see how it plays out, but I think that the pressure is only going to grow as time goes on, right? I think it's been just about 100 days since DTAO was launched, and a lot of these businesses can only fund themselves for so long. So it's going to be interesting to see, who takes what approach. If others take a KPI-based approach like we are, which I think we'll see. I bet we'll see many take this approach too. And then I think there's some other options that are being, have been colloquially mentioned on X and private DMs I've seen. But there's a lot of ways we can do it. And I think this is a great option too. So it's really cool.
So, Mikkel, I'm wondering, based on, because there are large sizes of groups that are subnet owners, right? There are small teams, especially like teams of one or two, and I think this approach actually would probably work well for them if this is something they're willing to embrace. But based on your guys's just testing and even just road mapping, who do you think that this specific approach works best for? And obviously the answer is probably for everybody, because that's what you do want. But
no. Of course, we would be more than happy to tokenize any of the subnets. Having that said, I do think that for the larger, already established subnets, the value add or the value proposition of doing a tokenization and launchpad on Taofu is a bit lower. And the two target groups, or at least two target groups that are very interesting, are subnets that have yet to register, so that they can use Taofu to also fund the registration cost. And then the second one is the subnets that did launch, but that are indeed a bit smaller, maybe smaller teams, maybe they have a bit less capital, maybe they're intertwined into the network a bit less, and they don't have venture backing yet. Those are interesting project protocols, subnets for us, but also for them to launch on Taofu. And then one more thing that I think is important to note from the other side is that Taofu also democratizes the funding process. So then from a subnet owner perspective, depending on what you deem to be important value-wise, maybe you could be funded with 1 or 2 or 3 million by one of the big venture partners. But that also means that you're shifting the full benefit of that investment to those same partners. Whereas if you'd launch on Taofu, you enable a larger user base, a larger community to basically support you. And then if all goes well, you can also reward that community. So it's also a bit of a sentiment thing. And then having all of those user groups set and tying it back to the layer 0 discussion, if you do tokenize on Taofu, the SNSs, the subnet seeds, they're fungible tokens. They're ERC20s living on potential EVM. Which means that they can be used as composable DeFi blocks throughout now the entirety of EVM. meaning that your subnet seed could be used on Aave as collateral or on Morpho, or maybe there are some chains you want to work together with. You can bridge liquidity there. You can have additional utility for the users on said chains. So it does open up a whole new plethora for the subnet owners as well in terms of the DeFi part.
Yeah, it's interesting right now, for whatever reason. The hot term right now is internet capital markets, right, guys? If you've been seeing this on the timeline, the ability for everyday users to own a part of very large projects coming up. So that was the first thing that went through my mind, honestly, Mikkel, when I heard you talk about SNS as being ERC20 fungible tokens, is the ability to not only fundraise but incentivize users to own a part of these really awesome digital super commodities that BitTensor is having. As if you've been following any of the stuff like on Believe, on Solana, for example, a lot of the stuff that's been more successful are actual products that actually have utility or some product underlying. So I definitely think this type of approach could be quite interesting for that and cause a lot of liquidity to flow in both directions, both for people who are looking to specifically find a yield stream, I guess, with regards to volume and trading between tokens, and looking from that perspective. It does open a little bit of a Pandora's box, I think, overall. But when you tokenize something, that's kind of what you're kind of expecting, right? Because I think that's probably the next step for BitTensor, is that a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are excited because it has the same tokenomics for the most part as Bitcoin, and they're having their first halving next year. So there's a lot of interesting things, a lot of plates spinning, a lot of balls up in the air about what could really be caught on the way back down. But I really love this idea. I love the ability to, I think you mentioned that at one point there's possibly the idea of having vaults or something like that, because I would love to be able to support my favorite projects in more than just owning alpha tokens. I would love multiple ways to provide liquidity for them to, for projects to see that and know that that sentiment is good and that people support. This is fantastic. I think specifically for marketing campaigns, where smaller subnets can come in and then bootstrap capital through different incentives, whether it be any of the number of points farming, or whatever you have out there that would provide other intrinsic value to a protocol. I think this is very exciting. So yeah, I'll leave it to you to kind of close out with whatever else you want the world to know about what's going on with this with TAO and seeds.
Yeah. Also echoing a bit of Luke on the KPI side, I do think that it's indeed very important that subnets do actually have external usage, external revenue coming into the system, because otherwise it will just be like a inflating Ponzi system. So then eventually we need usage, and to me what would be really dope is if you tie the utility or the usage of let's say a real world application with the SNS token, which is fundable, which opens up like a whole bunch of interesting stuff you can do for the full user base, boosting the entire system in like an organic and proper way. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to such use cases.
Love it. So give me a little bit of an idea from a roadmap perspective for both TPN and with SNS. How can everyone get involved? How can they find out more?
Yeah, luckily you already shared the link, right? We have taofu.xyz, which is for the Launchpad and SNS product. And then we have tpn.taofu.xyz, which points you to the developer part of the TPN subnet. We expect to be shipping the first user-facing and usable applications for TPN in the next couple of weeks. So then you can use the network, which is really dope. And the first SNS sale will also be done within the next couple of weeks. So on both the TAOFU and the TPN side, for us, it's very interesting times. They're very interesting times. We keep the Twitter socials updated, and we communicate all of the announcements there. So if you're interested in either checking out or participating in an SNS sale, or if you are either a developer or want to use an application on TPN, follow any of the 2 Twitter pages and you'll be kept up to date.
Love it. Any other questions you have, Luke?
No, I think you did an awesome job. I'm excited to see what you guys build.
Tell me about Glitch Financial, brother. How are we doing on that?
Man, we're busy. I don't got too much to touch on, actually. It's been we've had a lot to work on in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, taking some heat from the community from our reduction in miner emissions, which we kind of expected. So just kind of working on really building out more features on PTN. It's up at 8. So excited to see us roll out collateral, which will really enable traders to be rewarded more appropriately based on the funds that they're able to successfully trade with. So that should also, by nature, increase the performance of Glitch Financial accounts and those strategies. So I think we have a lot in the pipeline there too. I know we briefly touched on our active validator program on social media, which will essentially enable an incentivized competition for validators on BitTensor to create the best strategies for Glitch users. So I'm excited about that. Just continuing to work through we had some bugs on the strategy execution side that we've been working through, but we've been really working to nail those down and get back to pumping out good trades. So I'm definitely encouraged by the performance we've seen from our miners that fuel these Glitch Financial strategies. And then I think on the marketing side, one thing that gets me excited is we'll have a little rebrand coming here for Glitch in the next couple months once we go full public launch. So just really starting to work through the early phases of that now, but I think it looks awesome. Super stoked to share it with the community. So that's just something that gets me excited being a marketing guy. But at the end of the day, everyone only cares about the trades anyway. So
yeah, I'm excited to get in on the beta there. So
hey man, you got it whenever you want it.
I'll have to figure it out. I want to thank again our main guest, Mikkel founder TAO and TPN. Make sure you check out those links. We'll have them both on our YouTube as well as our Twitter as we live stream there. You can check the comments for that. Please follow them, all of our guests. And again, thanks you guys for being here. We do this as we have every week since December of 2021, where we educate our users on the great projects out there in DeFi, Web3, and blockchain investing, and help you interpret the news in a way that works for your allocations. Again, feel free to join us at our free group at totalvaluelock.school.com/beacon, school.com/beacon. Absolutely free. Take the challenge, check out Introduction to DeFi, get started on your way so that you can get the foundational knowledge to then go in and start using TAO and PTN and all of these great protocols that are out there, especially with BitTensor. So again, if you're going to be in Las Vegas next week for Bitcoin 2025, let me know. Happy to meet in person. I know a lot of people want to walk the floor with me, or people want me to check out their portfolio, see if everything looks right. Happy to do so. Again, not financial advice, of course, but again, we'll see you again next. I won't be here next week because I'll be in Vegas, but the week after that, we'll be back with a great new panel on talking about the great things in Web3. So you, Mikkel and Luke, stick around for a second while we do our outro. But thanks again for joining us. We're here every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern across all of our platforms. That's at 07. Beacons up. Banks down. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.